Matthew Hudson on the 15th of July. Thank you and welcome to update 1 of the EK experiment. First part of this that I want to do is thank every single one of you who's taken part of this. It is much appreciated. Everything, all the feedback I'm getting coming back is fantastic. It really is proving that this experiment is of value. It's been of value to you and it's of significant value to myself, and which means that everyone else who will benefit from doing this, and hence why we are going to get an update now, so that those of you who haven't started yet or just coming on board, there's additional sets of information which I can present here, which are going to help you get started and move on with this. Something which I should have known before I began all of this, and that was how many wonderful people I was going to meet. So thank you for that, because that is been a real pleasure for myself meeting you all. What I'd like to go through here is some major points which have come up in what we're doing here, and that is we've got some information regarding the timings of when you're running the session. We've got some information which is coming through on people's prior experience, sending the information back to myself. We will go over a little bit on that. There's also a little bit about running the process and what happens at certain points in the process, and also about your own level of commitment and what you can do. So we'll cover all of those areas. Starting off originally with timings. So at this point, so I have to put my hand up and say apologies for setting a potentially just an incorrect level of information on that. So sometimes this process is getting run very quickly. However, I appreciate people are running this for the first time. They're coming in, they're learning, they're running through it, and it takes longer. I didn't realize on the self-facilitation side it was going to take as long as it has taken for some people. So we are running from potentially people running at 2 hours for the first time up to, I think at the most it has been 4.5 hours in one single session. So please be aware that if you're running this as a full process, that it could take longer than I originally stated. So apologies for putting the wrong limits on that. My sense is that as you run more and more of these processes, it will shrink down in time as the system, your system gets used to the process, and the information you're working with shifts as well. So as well as those timings being off, we've had some feedback on that, and it appears that when people are putting the time in and getting down into the depths of what they're doing, one person who's on here called it deep diving. So she deep dived for 4.5 hours, and when she's come out of the other end of that 4.5 hours, it was a very profound experience. And the feedback from that has been fantastic. So it was all well worth the experience and the time she spent on doing it. So this kind of moves on to my next point, and that is prior experience. So we are working with people who have just coming into Clean Language, up to people who have been in Clean Language and known about it for over 15 years. So is there something that people need to know before starting this process? On the self-facilitation side, it's nice, I think, to have a little bit of clean space experience. So you know when you're moving between the spaces and you're able to differentiate what is happening in your body. You're able to experience that and recognize that. So perhaps having previous clean space or being previously facilitated in clean space is of value. There's also something about knowing what happens in the sixes, so when we're working in sixes. And that is when we get to iterations 4 and 5, we may start to see that that's when we start to hit the barriers, things start to collapse around us. In that, just know that when you get to the 6, that something else will emerge. There will be something else coming out of that system which wasn't there when we started. And we'll pick up on that again on the final point here, is that where you end up is where you begin. So there's something else here also about, I'll just go back to what actually might be happening here when we're running this process. And we might find that as the process continues and the experiment continues, that when I've said this is every week, once a week might be inappropriate at certain times. If you've done the process and it has had a profound experience and you're running through that, and you get a scenario where actually those changes are still happening, they're still moving through your system and they haven't fully settled down yet, then I would suggest do not go and do the process again the next week. So it may be that this process, you actually run this process every 2 weeks. It is what it is. Whatever happens for you is what happens. Become aware of your own system and only do this if it is appropriate. Don't push it. Don't force the system. This is your system and you're becoming aware of it. So get in contact with myself. We can have those discussions. They're all working towards enhancing this body of knowledge so we can inform other people. So on that, enhancing to myself is the 2 forms which are coming back. It is, some of the feedback has been that utilising the Google form has been difficult. Unfortunately, I can't change how the Google form operates, but 2 people have tried to use it and unfortunately it failed halfway through and they lost their data. So a second form was created which was for offering just to fill in a daily round. So those 2 links will be sent out. You should have the weekly one, I'll send the other one, so everyone will get an update of these 2, but you can use either of those forms. There's something here about where you are. It does fit with prior experience and so forth, and that is, what is your level of commitment to this? So if you're able to give 20-30 minutes a day and run a round of the process every day, fantastic. If you're able to run the process, you're able to give 4.5 hours. I take that's a larger scale view, but if you're able to give yourself those 2-3 hours once a week, fantastic. This time is your time. You are focusing on yourself. So this is self-benefiting to you. So all the time you put in is benefiting towards your own system. And this takes me back to where you end up is where you begin. This is emergence. We don't know when you start peeling off the onion what is underneath. So this is your stuff that is appearing. So wherever you end up, the stuff you end up with at the end of the process is where you're going to go into the next process. And you take that with you wherever you are at the stage of starting again, but take the essence of where you ended up. It's not always a good place. What comes out in emergence is not always bright and shiny and rainbows. It may not be, and if there are shifts and changes being made in your life, then it is coming back to those moments and moving through them and reassociating those maybe the unhappier times, the unhappier feelings, the unwanted feelings. They are the things that maybe have to be put out there so we can reassociate with them. I'll just point you to it's the last section in process 4, and it's called a little troubleshooting. So you'll see this if you look at the process 4 document which was sent out, and there's a statement here which is basically saying this approach may also be utilized if the client suddenly begins to express emotions, ideas, or thoughts that were not there in the beginning. So if something comes up which appears to feel significant, or it is showing up several times, then these 2 questions can be utilized. You can use either one of these, but what they'll do is they will give you a new past to put into your system. And that is, when have you had that before? So what has emerged out of the system, you could ask, and when have you had that before? And this would replace the question, where have you been, or where else have you been? That would give you another past to go back to. Another question which offers the same thing is, and what is your first memory connected to that? That is a little bit of troubleshooting. It allows you to move on and bring where those moments, puts them back into perspective of where you are now. I hope that assists you. This is a first update. I'd anticipate that we either do these every week. It may be a little bit longer than that. I'm not sure yet. It's an emergent experiment. It's proven to be very useful for me, very useful for you. Thank you so much again for your time. It is much appreciated. 15th of July. Let's keep on going. Thank you.